This is CNN.
It may be that 12 white jurors aren't going to convict 4 white cops for beating a black man, and maybe that's as basic as it is.
We had numerous occasions when there were attempts to kill firefighters. And they tried to kill them with axes. They tried to kill them with gunshots. They tried to kill them in a number of ways, and it's so unacceptable to me.
Welcome to Larry King Live. Tonight, Los Angeles erupts. Both leaders and looters condemn the Rodney King verdicts. Now, the real story behind the acquittal of 4 L.A. policemen, from the lawyers at the center of the case, and from a juror who came down on the side of the cops. Now, here's Larry King.
Good evening from Washington. The National Guard is rolling through Los Angeles tonight, through a dusk to dawn curfew, through at least $100 million in damages, through violence that has killed at least 16 people, through a city tearing itself apart over the decisions yesterday of 12 jurors in the Rodney King case. The incriminating videotape snippet televised over and over apparently didn't tell the whole story. The policemen were cleared of wrongdoing. It was not what the world was waiting to hear. Today, riots, looting, arson in L.A., copycat protests in other cities, including Atlanta. Is anyone at fault here? Has the system failed? Did the media go wrong? Are race relations in this country really this bad? In a moment, we'll talk with experienced prosecuting attorneys and others. We had arranged to feature Theodore Briseno, one of the 4 defendants, and his attorney, John Barnett. But, and this will give you a sense of how tense things are in L.A., he contacted our staff 90 minutes ago and said it was not safe for him to drive through the streets of Hollywood to our studios. Right now, we are joined in Los Angeles by Steven Lerman, Rodney King's attorney, who we all saw yesterday in a very angry outburst over the reaction. Steven, at all, do you think that your outburst might have contributed to what happened last night and today?
I certainly hope it didn't. As a matter of fact, a lot of people that saw that thought that I was accurately venting the frustration that they felt, and in a sense allowed some relief to those that wanted to have that opportunity to clear the air. Nobody really expected, least of all myself or my client Rodney King, that the city would erupt in such a furor over these verdicts. I have always maintained that Mr. King did nothing to warrant the senseless beating on March 3rd, 91, and certainly the city of Los Angeles is now the victim and will pay a much, much steeper and stiffer price for the actions of those 4 officers on March 3rd.
Stephen, when did Rodney become your client?
Mr. King retained me on or about March 6th, several days after the beating incident.
Okay, did you attend the trial?
Yes, sir. I attended 20 straight days of trial testimony, and then I elected to watch the trial with Rodney King, and I did so for the remainder of the testimony.
Should he have been called to testify?
I believe he should have been called. Mr. King was a witness under subpoena by the prosecution. He was prepared to go into court, tell the truth, tell these jurors what it felt like to be on the ground and be on the other receiving end of some of these control measures that the officers described during the proceedings.
Did you hear the judge's charge to the jury?
Yes, I did, for the most part.
Okay. Was it narrow? Because sometimes a judge can frame a charge to not give a jury much movement, as you well know.
Well, the jury instructions, which essentially perform the function of a guide path, if you will, a rules of the road sense of direction for jurors that they're mandated to follow, were the product of intense and long discussions between counsel and the court in chambers, and were the product of many, many hours, I'm sure, of input of all concerned.
Was it a fair charge from your standpoint?
For the most part, I think the charge, of course, there's evidence now with the result that the defendant's strategy of all or nothing certainly worked. There was an opportunity to have lesser included or lesser related offenses, which the jury could have selected from insofar as these defendants, but the defendants uniformly agreed to make it either a hit or miss proposition, and they hit.
But the judge's charge was, in your opinion, fair?
Under the circumstances, like I said, I was not privy to the discussions between counsel and the court. And
I'm just talking about what you heard in court.
For the most part, I guess it was fair.
Well, have you filed civil suits?
Yes, we have a Federal Civil Rights Act violation lawsuit pending in federal district court. Unfortunately, Judge Davies has been forced to stay our proceedings regarding our discovery, that is, until the termination of the criminal proceedings, which is what we just had up in Simi Valley.
How fast do you expect the federal government to move with regard to the possibility of federal indictments? How quick could that happen if it happens?
I think it could happen very quickly. Certainly there's a lot of political pressure, and given that pressure, perhaps as early as the end of next week. I think that the cumulative effect such a move would have far outweighs any type of other logistical consideration.
Were you with Rodney when the verdict was handed down?
I was in court when the verdict was handed down.
You called him right away?
Immediately.
What did he say? What the first thing he said?
He couldn't believe it. He said that can't be. That can't be. How could they do that? Don't they know what happened to me? I'd come out there now. If I came out now, I mean, could I? I mean, he was just distraught. He was overwhelmed, and I was actually very concerned that he would suffer some type of nervous breakdown.
All right, Stephen, your anger here. Was this case poorly prosecuted?
Well, I think that the prosecutors chose a game plan and went with it. To the extent that they followed their game plan, their effort was sincere. Looking back now as the Monday morning quarterback, it's easy to suggest that they should have used witnesses which would have spoken to the events when the car stops but before the video starts, because civilian witnesses have clearly indicated that Mr. King did in fact comply with the officer's requests. And certainly Mr. King himself could easily have testified on the issue of this headshot, which we contend was the first of the unlawful blows inflicted upon him.
A lot of people are talking about change of venue and why it was changed to the city it was changed to. Did the prosecution object at that time?
Strenuously. I was in court when the prosecution, Mr. White, Mr. Wilkinson, did their very best, it would seem, to persuade Judge Weisberg that the venue for the proceeding should be in Alameda County, in which demographics more resemble the county of Los Angeles where the incident took place. However, the court was motivated by other considerations, such as the access by witnesses and by defendants who were represented by their counsel as having limited funds, and the consideration by the judge being that not so much that the media wasn't going to be there, because the media outlets are the same for Simi Valley as they are for Los Angeles, but that the political implications were not present in Simi Valley.
What's your analysis?
Would be in Los Angeles.
What's your analysis, Stephen? Why did the county lose this case?
The county lost this case because I believe these jurors were inherently predisposed to acquit these officers. I believe that for whatever reason, whether it's a cultural bias or some other type of deep-seated conservatism that they all shared, that they just didn't want to believe that these officers did wrong. They were not persuaded, evidently, by the prosecution's argument that they acted out of policy. And I think that the jury just chose, and it would appear readily so, that the officers were going to be acquitted. They didn't really have much deliberation on the basic, fundamental question of guilt.
Why would this be a conservative concept? The conservative columnist and writer P.J. O'Rourke told me last night that he thought this was a blatant example of force. There was no doubt in his mind from the videotape alone it was open and shut. So why do you say it's a conservative concept to think the other way?
I think generally people, at least in my profession, are of the opinion that the inclination to follow in the so-called law and order mode, to be supportive of the police, perhaps at the suggestion that constitutional rights aren't as important as getting people off the streets, kind of leads to an image of a man behind the badge is doing no wrong. And certainly the Rodney King videotape changed all that, but these jurors were prepared to accept something other than what they were seeing, and in a sense being told not to believe what their eyes were telling them. One
of the officers who was to be on with you tonight and had readily agreed to be on with you along with his attorney decided 90 minutes ago not to come out of fear for his life. As you see the situation there in Los Angeles, was that a wise decision? Well,
notwithstanding the fact that my client, wants no one out there in the street, I think that's probably a very smart move. I would want to see harm come to anybody. This is a violent city. Coming to the studio, you could smell smoke. My investigator was shot at not more than 2 hours ago in a gas station by an individual who brandished a weapon and fired it at him. And these are unreported incidents. I think that this city is involved in a war that will not be won by anybody. There will be horrible cost for what happened up in Simi Valley, and I can't say that anything short of some type of infusion of reasonableness and reason here, whether it be by the federal government or the state government, can bring this thing to an end, and immediately. It's got to stop.
We'll be right back with Steven Lerman. He is the attorney for Rodney King. We'll be including your phone calls. We'll be hearing from a juror as well. This is Larry King Live in Washington. Don't go away.
Larry King Live is brought to you by Saab and your local Saab dealers, who invite you to test drive a car, not a compromise.
Saab convertibles hail from Sweden, whose northernmost reaches lie within the Arctic Circle, which is why Saabs are rugged, sure-footed on all surfaces, and provide a large weatherproof sanctuary with a driver's side airbag and anti-lock brakes, which makes Saab one convertible that won't be under the weather, no matter what weather it's under.
I'm not exactly known for being subtle, so I told Sprint the phone card had too many complicated numbers. Well, they fixed that. The new phone card has fewer numbers to dial, and the card number is even based on my home number. So now it's a lot easier to use. Of course, they'll probably say it was all their idea.
This plant didn't have to die. Just a few cents worth of miracid could have saved it. When azaleas and other evergreens turn sickly yellow, they need more than just fertilizer. They need miracid. You see, ordinary fertilizers just feed, but miracid feeds, ironizes, acidifies, helps restore vigor and beauty. And with miracid in your Miracle Grow feeder, you can keep azalea and other evergreens beautiful year-round. It's so easy. Just drop in and spray on. So fast, you'll treat all your plants in minutes.
At the Ashby Inn, the secret of our chicken rice recipe is in the rich taste of our chicken stock.
Country Inn rice dishes made with hearty country ingredients in Uncle Ben's rice. Taste the country in Uncle Ben's Country Inn. Rice dishes inspired by the finest inns.
Nearly 5.5 billion people live on this planet, 1/5 in absolute poverty. How long can the Earth's resources sustain a birth rate spiraling out of control? The People Bomb, Sunday, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Welcome back to Larry King Live. With us at our studios in Los Angeles is Steven Lerman. He is the attorney for Rodney King. Now, with us now on the phone from his car is John Barnett. John is the attorney for Theodore Briseno. We're not going to identify where he is. They were unable and unwilling to come to the studio tonight, something acknowledged by all of us as a pretty smart thing to do. John, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, your client, one of 4 acquitted, was the one who said that the other 3 went a little too far. Therefore, were you shocked at this verdict?
Mr. King, I was not shocked by this verdict, although I am never shocked by what juries do. I would not have predicted this verdict, but I was not shocked.
Well, how do you explain it? Could your client be not guilty and the other 3 be not guilty if your client is disagreeing with the other 3?
Well, I think it may revolve around the burden of proof, which is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and the jury may well have believed that each officer saw something different, and each officer could therefore be believed, though they were inconsistent in their views.
What's your analysis of this case?
You know, I really don't know. All I was concerned about was getting Officer Briseno acquitted. Beyond that, I think it's a very difficult case to analyze, and I have been involved with it from the beginning, and I think it defies analysis.
What did Officer Briseno say to you right after the verdict?
He said, "Thank you, Mr. Barnett."
Had he talked to the other officers during the trial?
No.
And they didn't talk to him?
Correct.
Did they talk after the trial?
Very little. Very, very little. And when I say they didn't talk, they may say hello, but beyond that, there was very little communication among or between Mr. Briseno and the other three defendants.
Was your client surprised at the verdict regarding the other three?
No, I don't think that he was. His view was very narrow. That is, his guilt or innocence. He was not concerned about convicting the other three. He was concerned about being defended as to himself alone.
And that was your only concern, was him, right?
Yes, sir.
Your concern was not the other three?
My concern was not the other three, except insofar as their cases might be intertwined with ours. I was not interested in convicting them, but in seeing that Officer Briseno was acquitted.
Will you, do you expect a federal indictment?
Well, I don't know. I certainly hope not, because it certainly smacks of the potential for a political prosecution. I mean, it would seem very difficult to get a fair trial anywhere for these officers now.
But that federal law was enacted to cover things such as this, when a jury of all one color lets people off, as happened with the Klan in the South, and they've had successful prosecutions in that vein.
Well, I'm not suggesting that it's not possible to prosecute these defendants under appropriate federal law. What I'm saying is that it may be difficult for these defendants to ever get a fair trial, given the response that the public has had to these acquittals.
And of course, they might well indict the other three and not your client based on the evidence as they find it out.
Well, that's certainly a possibility. I have maintained from the first that he was in a different factual position than the others.
Okay, now, Stephen, do you intend in your civil suit to sue Theodore Briseno?
Mr. Briseno is a defendant in the civil rights suit. Mr. King's position on that is that all four officers are culpable to him. As to the civil liability, they all use excessive force, act under color of authority, and we believe that Theodore Briseno, notwithstanding his testimony at the criminal proceeding, is properly named as a defendant in the lawsuit. He will be a defendant when the case goes to trial.
Couldn't he be a witness for you?
Well, frankly, I haven't explored that possibility. Mr. King, my client, is of the opinion that Mr. Briseno shares criminal liability with the other three officers, and we haven't even, at this point, even dreamed of using him as some kind of plaintiff's witness.
John, will this be a tough civil case to defend?
Well, I just defend criminal cases. I'm not defending the civil case. That's Mr. Greg Peterson, who is defending.
I see. What is your client going to do now, by the way?
Well, he's going to have his Board of Rights hearing, and hopefully he will be reinstated as a police officer and get his back pay and go back to work.
He wants to go back to being a police officer?
Yes, sir.
Despite all that's happened and despite what he sees going on right now?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Well, because he is a person who enjoys being a policeman. He enjoys helping others, and that's why he wants to continue being a peace officer.
Do you think he'll be reinstated?
I don't have any way to predict that. As I said, my field of practice is very narrow. It does not include administrative hearings or civil.
What, before you leave us, John, what's L.A. like in the street now?
It's a mess, Mr. King. It's a terrible mess. There's black smoke everywhere. There are roving bands of marauders with bricks in their hands. There are sirens and fires everywhere, and it's a very, very tragic scene, something out of a medieval movie.
Thanks, John. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it, and we understand why you couldn't get to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be back with Steven Lerman. We'll be hearing from a juror. We'll be taking your phone calls. This is Larry King Live in Washington. Don't go away.
People have to vent their anger, their frustration, This was shocking. Nobody could have anticipated this verdict. So they must get that out. It sort of exercise the relief that comes from saying, I'm mad as hell.
Want to be involved in the war on drugs, but make no mistake, if you're a parent, you've been drafted. Call for a free parent's guide to drug prevention. 1-800-624-0100.
It's pretty rough up there today. It's always something. Weather, traffic. Just means we've got to be in control every minute. Just glad the Honeywell control systems help take care of the navigating. Besides shorter flight times and fuel savings, now we can really focus on flying. Anything that helps lighten our workload is more luxury. It's a necessity.
Honeywell, helping you control your world.
Most eye doctors agree dry, irritated eyes should be treated. And doctors agree dry, irritated eyes can be effectively treated with soothing, cooling Visine Extra. Visine gets the red out.
Freedom, freedom.
Lady Stetson. Independence. A declaration of independence. Wear it.
Listen to this. Last month, I made a long-distance call from a payphone to the home office. The other day, I get a bill from some operator service company I've never even heard of for twice the AT&T price. Hey, what's going on here?
When you make a long-distance call and you don't hear AT&T after the... Hang up, dial 10-ATT-0, then the area code and number. You get the AT&T service you want and prices you expect.
You just gotta listen.
AT&T.
At our studios in Los Angeles, Steven Lerman, the attorney for Rodney King. He'll be with us through the entire program tonight, and we will be including your phone calls. We're now joined by Charles Ziwi of CNN News. Where are you, Charles?
Larry, we're right outside the command post in south central L.A., where the police have set up and the fire control is, and where they've been running the operations here, trying to keep ahead of the looting and the rioting.
What can you tell us at about 6:22 p.m. L.A. time right now?
I can tell you definitely the situation is not under control by any stretch of the imagination, Larry. I can see just out of camera range here, fresh fires broken out a couple of blocks away. All throughout the day today, fires have popped up next door to this command center almost, and just about anything and anybody is fair game. This is a news car from Las Vegas, had the back window shot out just a little while ago, a couple of blocks down the street, so we are literally in the center of what's going on. And people are walking through this area, people who live in this area, seething with the kind of rage I have rarely seen in covering a news event, and they are ready to burn this entire place down, if need be, they say, to make their point.
And Charles, the police chief had appropriated $1 million in advance of the verdict, had every policeman on duty to be out. Why can't they take control?
This is I hate to use the word insurrection, Larry, but this is a mass rebellion in terms of people deciding to flaunt the law. You can hear the police helicopter going over. There have been dozens upon dozens of policemen come through this area right now in the past 5, 6, 7 hours, and they have been doing nothing but going from hot spot to hot spot, from burning liquor store to burning grocery store to looted appliance store, trying to keep ahead of it. And at best, it's sort of like moving sand around on the beach. You don't do very much. You just move it from one place to the other. And the mostly young people who have been setting these fires are continuing to stay ahead. Police are not arresting a lot of people from what we've seen. They are arresting a number, but they are not going a long way toward actually sweeping the people who are causing this trouble off the street. So it continues to be out of hand. The National Guard is moving in even as we speak. Perhaps their presence here will send a message, but we have yet to see them right where we are, and we are virtually in the center of everything.
What percentage, Charles, would you say, and this may be hard and you're doing an excellent job, may be involved in looting?
Well, Larry, I think it's very small. I mean, maybe 1-2% of the young people, if that many. I think you're dealing with a handful of people. But the important point is that many people condone the kind of rage that is being expressed in the torch they condone the kind of feelings that are being expressed by someone who would smash a window, a car window, or an appliance store window.
Angry frustration.
There are a lot of people who, angry frustration. People are sick and tired. A fellow told us a little while ago, if we have to burn it down, we'll burn it down to make our point, and we'll start all over.
What, Charles, is the mood of the police?
It seems to me to be bewilderment. They're trying to do the best they can. They're trying to maintain an even hand here. It seems to me, Larry, and this is just a personal observation, that they're trying to do everything they can to contain the situation and not inflame it. And they're failing, as far as I see, to actually control it, but they're trying to not do anything that would further exacerbate the situation.
But they are not reacting with anger?
I haven't seen that. I've seen sternness. I've seen a fair display of force. I've not seen a wide scale. I mean, police have shot past our location here with shotguns sticking out of the front and back windows of their cars. They're armed with shotguns and riot guns back behind us there, but I've yet to see people actually brandishing those weapons up close and you know, using the visual impact of those weapons.
Thanks, Charles, so much. We'll check back with you. Charles Ziwi of CNN at Command Central in Los Angeles. We'll pause, and when we come back, Steven Lerman, the attorney for Rodney King, will continue with us, and we'll be joined on the phone by a member of the jury. And we'll be including your phone calls. This is Larry King Live. More on the Rodney King matter tomorrow night, and of course, 24 hours of coverage here on the only network you have to be, CNN. This is Larry King. We'll be right back.
We were seeing a lot of young people, a lot of gang members, a lot of drunks, a lot of people who will use any excuse whatsoever to do this kind of thing.
Introducing the Movado Concerto Collection, an orchestration of bracelet, dial, and case. The Concerto Collection from Movado.
If your doctor has recommended Metamucil and you like the results, but you don't like those glasses of thick liquid, change to FiberCon. Get the same fiber action in easy-to-swallow tablets. Get doctor-recommended FiberCon.
Contact lens wearers. Now you can save up to 50% on the same brand lenses your doctor prescribed by ordering through Lens Express. Bosch & Lomb, Wesley Jensen, Seba, Johnson & Johnson, and all other brands. Daily wear, extended wear, tints, colors, bifocals, torics, gas perms, and disposable lenses. Delivered by Federal Express directly to your home or office from America's #1 shop-at-home contact lens replacement service. All lenses are 100% money-back guaranteed. Join the thousands who are saving real money and time by ordering their contact lenses direct from Lens Express. All we need is your doctor's name and phone number. We'll obtain your prescription and provide you with the exact same lenses at substantial direct-to-you savings. So for your next pair of lenses, call the lens replacement specialists, Lens Express. Call today for your free catalog and more information. 1-800-592-5600. That number again, 1-800-592-5600.
Tonight, on Sports Tonight, the latest on the civic unrest in Los Angeles and its effect on professional sports there. We'll have a complete report. Nolan Ryan returns to the mound for the Rangers, plus the NBA and NHL playoffs continue at 11 p.m. Eastern Time.
Larry King Live continues, followed by World News after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
Healthy all over. Feeling good, good, so good, so good. Feeling healthy all over.
Feel as good as you look with 8E's Healthy All Over Skim Milk. It'll give your whole body a boost.
Welcome to New Delhi Palace, a delicious experience in fine Indian cuisine. Proudly offering a full selection of dishes from North India and breads fresh from our own charcoal-fired clay oven. harmonious and subtle blends of herbs and spices, which give Indian cuisine its unique aroma and flavor, and each dish can be spiced to your liking. Enter the gateway to fine Indian cuisine, New Delhi Palace, 86th and Douglas in Urbandale.
This is CNN.
Welcome back to Larry King Live. With us in Los Angeles, Steven Lerman, the attorney for Rodney King. We are joined on the phone by a juror in the Rodney King case, whose name CNN has agreed not to reveal. I thank you for joining us, ma'am. What's been your reaction to all that's happened in the last 24 hours?
I'm sickened by the whole process, everything that's happened. I'm just absolutely sick about it.
Are you surprised?
Yes, I am surprised. From the actions that I've observed on the television, I am thoroughly convinced that irregardless of which verdict we returned, this action would have taken place.
Well, if you had returned guilty, why would it have taken place?
I think these individuals that are involved in this looting, etc., were just waiting for a cause, waiting for an accident to happen. I don't really believe they have King's interest at heart. I don't think they have anybody's interest at heart.
When you went in to deliberate with the other 11, had you pretty much made up your mind? What were your feelings when you first got together initially to discuss it after the trial?
We had not made up our minds at all. None of the jurors had. We didn't start making up our minds until after we had deliberated long, hard hours. We looked at the evidence as it was presented to us. We reviewed the video on and on, the original video, the FBI enhanced video, and we looked at the video frame by frame, and all the evidence that was presented, all of the testimony that was presented.
In the one count against Officer Powell, in which there was a hung jury, where did you stand in that vote?
Not guilty.
Not guilty. What turned it for you?
It was the multitude of the evidence. It was no single item. The video initially, when it was first exposed, was awful to look at. It was terrible. But then when you look at all of the evidence, the preceding things that had been happening, the chase on the freeway and everything that ensued.
Well, why would a chase allow people to beat up someone?
A chase does not allow anybody to beat anybody.
And what was it about the preceding things that we didn't see that convinced you?
The chase convinced me in relating to the officers' frame of mind. What the officers knew was that they were chasing a suspect, a felony suspect, if you will, who was driving most erratically on the freeway system and then on the surface streets. When he finally parked where he chose to park, because he had started and stopped on numerous occasions during the chase. So he selected his point of stopping. It was his choice, next to a park. And his two companions, which were also black, got out of the vehicle immediately and submitted to searching and handcuffing. And Rodney King dictated all of the actions, in my mind, after he finally decided to get out of the car.
Are you saying, ma'am, that he wanted to be hit?
No, I'm sure he did not want.
You say he dictated the actions. What does that mean?
By his actions. I think he wanted to get away from there. I think he was well aware that had he been caught, he would go to prison.
Yeah, but once they started hitting him, he wasn't going to get away.
Well, he did try. He did not get away, but he did try. He lunged, he came from a crouch position into a full standing and running position within something less than 2 seconds. And
you don't think they could have stopped and just handcuffed him? They had to keep hitting him when he was down?
They had tried to be upon him and handcuff him. 4 officers had gotten a hold of him, 1 on each leg and 1 on each arm. And he allowed that to happen. And then when he decided he did no longer want to be in that position, he threw the officers off with the force of his body.
So you're saying that, in your opinion, Rodney King controlled these events?
Yes. Because when he decided to stop the action, when he did indeed stop, put his hands behind his head, the officers quit striking him. And I think had he not been constantly trying to get away, etc., I don't think this would have taken place.
In our studios, ma'am, is Steven Lerman, the attorney for Rodney King, and he will be representing him in the civil matter, and if there is other matters as well. And Steven, is there anything you would like to say or ask of this juror?
I don't think I have anything to ask her. I
What's
feel for
your
her.
opinion on what she said?
I think it's absolutely ludicrous. Everything that she says, although I respect the fact that she sat in the courtroom and probably had to endure a lot more than those of us that could get up and walk away and use the facility, for example. That's not the evidence I saw. I think that she has to understand that Brian Allen and Freddie Helms were both beaten too by officers at the scene. That never came out in the trial. There were civilian witnesses that spoke to the fact that Rodney King complied from the time that the car stopped until the videotape started. And I think she bought hook, line, and sinker the defense argument. I feel sorry for her. I know that sometimes she has to deal with the fact that there's a lot of violence in Los Angeles. And ma'am, if that's what you choose to believe, then so be it. But that is certainly not the impression I got from the evidence. And if you believe for a minute that Rodney King controlled that scenario, you'll believe anything.
Ma'am, you want to respond?
I'm sorry for you.
Yes, we were presented with no evidence whatsoever as to the other occupants of the car being touched by the police other than searching and handcuffing. One of them was a witness on the stand. Perhaps you were in the court, I don't know.
Yes, ma'am.
And he gave no indication.
He did. He stated in his examination, I believe by Mr. Stone, that he was beaten too. It was either by virtue of White's examination or Stone's, and it was just left untouched. Freddie Helms, another passenger in the car who I represented before his untimely death last summer, also sustained beatings at the hands of these officers. The school police involved, Highway Patrol involved, and the LAPD officer at the scene engaged in a feeding frenzy of violence. All three individuals, King, Helms, and Allen, sustained injuries.
Madam Juror, the testimony for the prosecution, including one of the commanders of the police, didn't impress you. Why?
The one testimony was from the officer that was in charge of writing the force pamphlets, etc., and he just seemed to have an absolutely closed mind. He had talked with the two Highway Patrol people and seemed to buy simply what they were saying and totally refused to look at any of the other evidence that was presented to us.
All right, how about Officer Briseno, one of the defendants, statement that he thought the other three went too far. So you say they were all not guilty. One of them is either Briseno is wrong or they were wrong.
I felt, and I think most of the other jurors did also, feel that Officer Briseno was trying to protect himself to the exclusion of anybody else.
Protect himself from what if he was not guilty, according to you?
I felt that his testimony was to protect himself from the jury saying that he was guilty.
In other words, he was protecting himself even though you didn't think he was not guilty. He didn't have to present himself that way.
At that time, I didn't know.
Yeah. How did you react to the terminology about guerrillas in the exchange between the police officers?
I reacted to that by looking at the time frame. That was another call, had nothing to do with Rodney King's incident. It was a house call on a home problem, and as everybody knows, any policeman hates to go within the home confines when there's an argument within the family.
But the term guerrillas didn't bother you?
Not at all.
Not at all?
No.
Does it bother you, Stephen?
It sickens me. Lawrence Powell's demeanor on the witness stand, to me, was smug, was arrogant. I think that the racial animus that he possessed then and now, by making that comment, showed that race was a motivation. I just don't know where this juror was when this evidence came out.
I got to take a break and take some calls.
Shocking.
Ma'am, are you saying that Rodney King's color had nothing to do with this at all?
Absolutely nothing at all.
If this had been 4 black police officers and a white assailant, a white person in a car, you'd have voted the same way.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back. Don't go away, ma'am, and we'll take calls from the viewers. This is Larry King Live in Washington. Stay right there.
Leona, your automatic teller. Can I help you with a student loan?
No, a car loan, Leona. Fast forward.
A home improvement loan.
It's a General Motors car. Don't get hassled when you finance a new car or truck. Get GMAC financing only at your GM dealer. Is there someone live I could talk with around
Do we
here?
have one of our calendars? This is a farm calendar. We also have what they call a pretty calendar. If I can only find it.
Some of you lucky people are getting new calling cards from AT&T. There's just one little hitch. That easy-to-remember card number you've always had? It's history. But don't worry, you can still have a card with your home number plus 4 digits. The new phone card from Sprint. Call now, and it even comes with 100 minutes free. So, which phone company's calling card would you rather have now?
Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate goes to work on an open house. Expect it to be closed. Don't miss your new home. Visit a Better Homes and Gardens open house this weekend.
Sunday, TBS presents the movie that made Clint Eastwood an international superstar.
Go ahead, load up and shoot.
Fistful of Dollars. 10:35 Eastern Sunday morning on TBS.
Welcome back to Larry King Live. By the way, next Wednesday night, a full hour with your phone calls for Henry Kissinger. At our studios in Los Angeles is Steven Lerman, the attorney for Rodney King. On the phone is a juror in this matter. We have also heard from John Barnett, the attorney for Theodore Briseno, who was due to be with us, but feared for his life tonight, and for Charles Ziwi of CNN News. We're going to go now to your phone calls. The juror is with us, as is attorney Lerman. Baton Rouge, hello.
Hi, Mr. Lerman. What were your professional actions in the approval of an all-white 12-member jury who may have been culturally biased? And were any black minorities approved as jurors by the defense?
All right, now, he had nothing to do with this trial, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm a civil attorney, and I said as an observer in the trial, not as a participant.
Were any blacks questioned for jury duty?
There were a few blacks. However, the demographics of the Simi Valley area, in a sense, limited the number of blacks available. It's not that they're unwelcome there, per se. They just don't live there in any great number.
And those blacks were excused?
Yes, sir.
By the defense?
Predominantly by the defense.
Okay, let's go.
Black skin by and of itself does not ensure that a juror will be appropriate or fair for any given proceeding. But it just didn't work out. I'm
just trying to set the record straight. Silver Spring, Maryland, hello.
Yes, Larry, I have a question for your juror on the phone.
Sure.
I'd like to know if it was their intention to isolate Lawrence Powell and have the next jury, if there is to be one, focus on him rather than focus on 4 defendants with their own separate attorneys.
Absolutely not. We looked at each defendant as an individual. We looked at each count for each individual. And it's simply that the jury did not agree on the one count against Officer Powell. It was an 8-4 for not guilty.
And you were one of the 8?
Yes, indeed, I was one.
Madam Juror, when you began deliberations and you were open, you hadn't made up your mind. What about the prosecution side at that point, since you hadn't made up your mind, impressed you?
I can't think of a particular point. We looked at the whole process in its entirety. We didn't isolate one point here or one point there.
Was Officer Powell a good witness from your standpoint, bad witness, or neither?
I think it was a toss-up. He was, part of his statements were believable, and part of them were not. These people are just human beings. They're not special creatures. They're trained to do their job. It is their chosen occupation, and they have to act under the confines of their training that's issued by the Los Angeles Police Department.
You don't think, though, this is giving a signal now that if you chase someone, you could beat them up?
Absolutely not. And I don't think they beat him up. I think they simply did what they had to do to get him contained, to get him in handcuffs.
Charles Ziwi reported, ma'am, that only about 1 maximum, maybe 2% of people are looting, and you complaining about the looting. How about the other 98% of the people on the streets? Don't you think they have logical frustration and anger?
In relation to this case,
Sure.
I don't know why.
You don't think the tape had any bearing on people?
I think the tape had a lot of bearing on people.
Well, wouldn't that be why?
I think the tape is ludicrous. I think the tape in itself is horrible. I think people should take a little bit of time to look at all of the evidence, not just that small portion of that very faulty tape.
Did you expect, ma'am, Rodney King to testify?
Yes, we did.
Was that discussed in the jury room?
No, it wasn't. It was not a part of the evidence, so we were not allowed to take that into our deliberation.
Did you hold it against him that he didn't?
Absolutely not. That was the prosecuting attorney's choice, and that's simply their choice. That was their case, and they presented it, I believe, as they intended to present it.
Did they do a good job, the prosecution?
I think they did a good job for the evidence that they had, that they utilized.
Vienna, Virginia, hello.
Yes. If L.A. didn't, this is for the juror, if L.A. didn't riot when the video was first shown, how can you possibly state that they would have rioted no matter what the verdict was?
If they didn't riot then, why indeed are they rioting now?
I mean, don't you think they rioted in response to your verdict?
I really don't.
In other words, if you had come in guilty on all counts, there would have been riots in L.A. tonight.
I believe they were waiting.
Over what?
Pardon? Anything. I don't think they needed anything. I think it was an accident waiting to happen, and this is the time they selected to have it happen.
So they would have used it even if you convicted?
I believe so. What would they do if there were no policemen? What if all the policemen walked off the force? What indeed would Los Angeles County do? What would Southern California do?
What does it have to do with that verdict?
Pardon?
What does it have to do with the verdict and the horror that's been inflicted on this city and continues to be inflicted? But for that verdict, there would be no horror. Ma'am, I believe that you are either kidding yourself and making yourself feel better, and I don't blame you for that. I feel for you. Any reasonable person would have to feel a sense of blame given the circumstances, but my God, ma'am, don't ignore the fact that this community has been in complete upheaval since this incident.
I got to get a break, Stephen. Ma'am, do you fear for your health?
Not really, no. But how do these people that are rioting justify what they're doing to honest, law-abiding citizens? It's far worse, far, far worse than anything the police inflicted upon a felon.
Well, an accused felon. We'll be back with Steven Lerman and our juror on the phone and more of your phone calls after this.
Hello, I'm Susan Rook. At the top of the hour, the latest from Los Angeles, where a curfew will be in effect shortly. We will see if that's keeping people off the streets and keeping calm. Also, reaction in other cities to the verdict. World News is right after Larry King.
Recently, the International Motorsports Association held a decathlon, performance and control. Over 22 days, 7 cars competed in 10 events to determine which was best overall. It wasn't Acura or Volvo, nor Mercedes or Mazda, nor Lexus or BMW, but the Audi 100 V6, the IMSA Decathlon Gold Medal winner.
Only one adult cereal could be this much fun to eat. Basic 4. A colorful mix of lightly toasted flakes, sweet and tangy fruits, and crunchy nuts. Splash on cold milk and you get something tasty from each of the 4 food groups. Basic 4, the adult cereal. With a taste that never grew up.
Excuse me, do you know what stock options are?
I wish I did.
When is the weak dollar good for business?
Good?
I don't know. The world of finance and investing can be pretty confusing unless you call for this, the Wall Street Journal's video guide to money and markets. It explains the markets in clear, simple English and brings them to life. This exclusive 30-minute video is free when you call for 13 weeks of the Wall Street Journal for just $37, over 20% off the newsstand price. Subscribe to the Journal and get a daily view of the whole world of business and how it affects you. Information you know you should know. Call now, and you'll be ready next time someone asks you, are munis always a safe investment?
I'm not sure.
Call toll-free 800-272-3400 for 13 weeks of the Wall Street Journal and your free video on money and markets. That's 800-272-3400.
We're going to spend a couple of quick moments with the mayor of Beverly Hills, Robert Tanenbaum. We're doing this because he's a former New York prosecutor. He's running for district attorney in Los Angeles. Bob, was this case poorly prosecuted?
Well, you know, the real tragedy here is, after particularly listening to this juror, all I hear about is what took place from the defense. And you have such a powerful, overwhelming case from the prosecution side. You dream about a case like this to try. You talk about having a motion picture case when you have a defendant who confessed, who have fingerprints, you have an accomplice, you have eyewitnesses. That's basically a motion picture case, figuratively. But literally here you had one. Trouble is, in this particular county, we have a DA himself who's never tried a case. And the real problem here is this case has undermined criminal justice, not only in Los Angeles County, but throughout the country. And it's the kind of a case, Larry, I tell you, that as DA, the DA himself should have tried and not sent two deputies up to Simi Valley or anywhere else.
Bob, from listening to this juror, do you think you could have convinced her to vote guilty?
I think that an experienced, seasoned veteran, someone like myself who has tried hundreds of cases to verdict, would have convicted these defendants. They're lucky I was not the DA in LA County at the time.
Should the federal government indict?
It's regrettable that we have to have the federal government come into this county and do what the DA should have done. And that's a real tragedy. But right now, there's no question in my mind that the federal authorities have to look at this very carefully and should proceed, because we can't permit this kind of injustice to take place. We haven't had this kind of injustice, frankly, since churches were bombed in Birmingham and Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman were murdered in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
And you're blaming the prosecutor more than the explanation from the juror?
All I hear from the jurors is an indictment of the prosecution. I don't hear about the kind of persuasive arguments
She said they did a good job.
She says they did a good job. She also made some other comments to me which were very suspect with respect to the whole presentation of this case. One of the things that really troubled me about this case from when it was being conducted was that Rodney King didn't take the stand. Because the issue in this case was not the background of Rodney King, was not whether or not he was a felon, whether or not he had other issues that were involved prior to the time he was on the ground. There were 21 police officers there. They could have sat on him. Bill Bradley in the Senate today counted out 56 beatings of him that took place in approximately 81 seconds. This isn't a case that's a close case. In America, we do not beat people when they're in custody.
We'll be right back with quick remaining moments after this.
Hello, I'm Ted Texter in Atlanta. We'll be back with Larry King Live in a moment. First, we want to check your weather through the day tomorrow. It looks like it'll be still a little bit soggy from the Great Lakes region into the north and the east, the upper Midwest as well. Could be a bit of a stormy start anyway. Southern tier of the nation in plenty of sunshine through the day tomorrow. A little patchy fog, cloud cover in through the Gulf region through the early part of the morning hours. Back westward, lots of clear sky, lots of sunshine, some clouds along the north and western coast. But overall, it looks like a pretty good day to start us off. High pressure down in the Four Corners area, keeping it hot there. High temperatures through the afternoon look like this. Once again, it'll be mostly mild through the southwestern U.S., right on up into the plains. The heat wave continues, and it's all rolling further to the east. The north and the western United States to the Intermountain region. Looks like 60s through the afternoon tomorrow. Still fairly comfortable. On the cool side from the north and eastern United States, back westward through the Great Lakes. Now these forecasts for cities around the nation.
Why is the new phone card from Sprint not just another calling card? Now your card number is based on your home number, so it's easy to use. It'll deliver a message for you, even to someone whose line is busy. Lets you set up your own three-way conference calls. Its info hotline lets you check stocks, weather, sports, even news. Call now and it even comes with 100 minutes free. Try getting all that with another phone company's calling card.
At Ford Motor Company, we don't just build quality cars and
Ford
trucks.
Customer Assistance Center, how may I
We
help
build
you?
relationships.
my keyless entry.
Our customer assistance department assists over 4,000 people a day on everything from warranties to how to program a keyless entry system. It's part of a whole philosophy at Ford that's rapidly changing the ownership experience.
Well, it's important to us that you're happy with your car. Thanks for calling Ford.
Ford Motor Company. Quality is job one.
It's working.
It's working.
Ever since I was a little kid, the only thing I was interested in was dogs.
John Woodring, top breeder of champion beagles.
I show dogs because I love showing the dogs. I do it for the personal satisfaction of taking a nice dog and having it win in the ring. I only want my dogs to have the best food, and the best food we've found is pedigree and pedigree mealtime. I really like the pedigree meat mixed with the mealtime dry. I'd recommend pedigree to anybody who owns a dog, either a pet or a show dog.
Pedigree, developed with vets, recommended by top breeders.
The sporting life, there's nothing quite like it. I'm Jim Hubert. Join me monthly for a look at some of those whose stories may not make the headline, but whose dedication to the pursuit of excellence makes all the difference in the world.
The Sporting Life begins Saturday morning on CNN.
Steven Lerman, we're running out of time. Might your client, Rodney King, come forward to ask for calm in the community?
He wants very desperately for there to be calm. In fact, he's implored me to speak out on his behalf. Right now, Rodney King is doing his best to, in a sense, get himself together. We're trying to stage some type of public airing of his reaction, but you know, he doesn't want his appearance and in the state that he's in to incite further violence. He doesn't want anyone looking at him and feeling sorry for him. And by that I mean he is in many ways a very pitiful sight right now to inspire any further violence. He doesn't want any part of this
almost
violence.
out of time. Might he do this program?
Well, I don't know, right? You know, Mr. King has never wanted to sensationalize his case. He's never wanted to give the city a black eye except for what happened. He's never done the talk show circuit. You know, in fact, Rodney King has basically tried to convalesce and deal with his pain and fear in private.
I'm just thinking that it might be a pretty good idea at this point to come forward, even if it asks for calm. If we were to see him doing that, it might help.
Well, he's afraid that his very image might incite even more violence. He thinks the city's out of control, and his own security can't be guaranteed under these circumstances.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for spending the time and giving us the hour. We are completely out of time. More on, of course, on this tomorrow night. Susan Rook and Jonathan Mann will co-anchor the World News. Jonathan, what's up?
Larry, coming up, a live update from Los Angeles and a look at reaction to the verdicts and the violence from across the country. World News is next.
Coming up, World News, followed by Sports Tonight, after a word from your local cable system, here on CNN.
Years ago, the great famous Notre Dame football coach, Knute Rockne, was asked by a newspaper reporter if he thought crossing himself helped win football games. He smiled and said, "It does only if our tackles are bigger than their tackles." It's always been people, whether it's an organization, whether it's a ball team, or whether it's a clothing store like Reichardt's. Let me introduce you to the people from Reichardt's.
This is Ray Geniga, Richard Ageniga, Moe Ewan, Alphonse Catalino, Wal Vu, Jennifer Collins, Sue Dunnigan, Linda Peterson, John Reese, Don O'Brien, Herb Hine, Duke Reichhardt, Craig Loning, Sue Stilo, Zoe Rawson, Fran Schrader, Ann Pfeiffer, Sheila Yoder, and Mike Jones.
We really have confident people here, and you'll be satisfied for a long time when you shop here, and I'll see to it, because I'm here. I'm Bill Reichardt, and I own the store.
Right now at your Earl May Nursery Garden Center, stock up on America's #1 weed killer, Ortho Weed Be Gone, Kill Creeping Charlie, dandelions, henbit, spurge, thistles, and many more. Wipe out more weeds with a name you trust. Ortho Weed Be Gone. It's just $5.99 right now at any Earl May Nursery and Garden Center. But you'd better hurry. At this price, it won't last long. Ortho and Earl May, names you can trust. When it comes to lawn care, Earl May knows.
AE presents Colors, the colors of flavor. AE Colors are healthy and good. Yeah. Some of nature's best colors bring out the best flavor in AE low-fat yogurt. No preservatives, nothing artificial added. All natural is all you get in every delicious bite. Nobody colors flavors like AE.